My name is Kaisar Maulana Firjatullah with my NPN number 2420302098, and this is my speech. Make the gaming industry great again. Video games started from the humble arcade machines. Big machine boxes lined all along the wall with all different kinds of games, popular in the late 1970s to early 1980s. And then come the console era, where people could play video games for the comfort of their own homes. Consoles started in the mid 1980s and blew up around the 1990s until now. In my opinion, the early 2000s were the golden age of the gaming industry, or gaming as a whole. Consoles were getting more accessible and people played more video games than ever before. Not just individually, where you take turn with the other person, but together. And now, in the 21st century, video games are everywhere. They're, they're on your nieces and cousins' phone, and console is still plenty in people's homes, and PC gaming is the biggest it's ever been. What made video games as successful as it is, besides the consumers, are the very talented and passionate developers that made their idea into reality, into something that can be experienced by many people. But nowadays, it feels different. Developers become bigger studios and big companies, and when humans can see that there's money involved, some of them will try to take advantage of that. And now that's what I feel. The corporate greed. It's seeping into what once was a place for passionate people, developers, or players to realize and experience video games for what it was entertainment. The corporate greed. I felt it started around in late 2019 with the introduction of microtransactions where people could pay with real life money in exchange for in-game currencies. That was also around the time where popular video game franchises like Call of Duty, FIFA, Madden, etc. became household names in the gaming industry, especially in their console market. And that's where the gaming industry went downhill, in my opinion. With how popular those games are, the higher ups in those big game studios, for example, Electronic Arts, it began to be apparent how they're trying to exploit their games. Games that used to be small in size began to be obnoxious. Call of Duty, for example, in the early 2000s, Call of Duty was only 20 to 23 gigabytes in size, and now 100 plus gigabytes. Why? Because the corporate greed. The people in charge of the big game studios saw that even if their game wasn't as polished, as well made as it used to, people would still buy them regardless. They become less interested in making well-made video games that is accessible and affordable for a big audience, and instead try to make them only for a quick cash grab. Same formula, same graphic, just repackaged in a new coat of paint. I'm sure the talented individuals making the game are still as passionate as ever about their craft, but they can't do anything against the higher ups who only focuses on the income that the game could bring. And that's where I want to ask for your help and try to convince you to realize how horrible the gaming industry has become. Because if our words on reaching those greedy higher ups, then maybe our actions will. I'll stop beating around the bush. The only reason those greedy corporate individuals could think that they could get away with unpolished and lazy video games is because the majority of people, which were fans of those popular game franchises from back in the day, kept blindly buying the game over and over again. The same formula, right? So, first, let's try to be more mindful and thoughtful of the games we buy. Let's properly research and see what the actual game has to offer before we spend our money, right? Because when we take a step back and see the bigger picture, we could tell that this is the same formula, the same game just like before, yet they're selling it to be more expensive and not as accessible for people who doesn't have the device that can play those games with bigger sizes and heavier minimum requirements, specification of hardware. Now, some of you might ask, I still want to play similar video games, but I also don't want to support those greedy higher-ups. What should I do? Well, with the advancement of technologies, there's more and more smaller indie, or what we call them are indie developers or indie gaming studios. Now, indie studios are my second recommendation to make the gaming industry great again. By supporting smaller creators, we could show that those big game studio that we don't need them as much as they think we do. There's plenty of fun and entertaining video games by smaller creators and developers that is not only cheaper and more accessible for a wider audience who may not have the best hardware specifications to play modern popular video games. And for my last point is, let's be more passionate with the things that we love and enjoy, especially us gamers who grew up with video games and saw how the unfairness and how bad the gaming industry has become. Let's be more vocal with our opinions. Because if we reach a bigger audience of people and convince them to do the same, maybe one day those greedy game studios will realize that the people want affordable, and accessible video games with polished gameplay and interesting stories. That would be all from me. My name is Kaisar Maulana Farijatua, and thank you for watching.